The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 7 when Maya heard the panic in Professor Hartwell's voice echoing down the corridor. She had been on her knees, scrubbing a stubborn stain from the marble floor outside practice room C, when the sound of his expensive leather shoes came clicking rapidly toward her. "You there, Maya?" His voice cracked like a teenager's, which was strange for a man who usually spoke with the authority of someone who'd been teaching at Belmont Academy for 30 years. Maya looked up, pushing a strand of dark hair back under her cleaning cap. Her hands were red from the cleaning solution, and she quickly wiped them on her uniform. "Yes, Professor? Is something wrong with one of the rooms? I cleaned the recital hall 2 hours ago, just like—" No, that's not it. He was breathing hard, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled. His bow tie hung crooked, and there was a wild look in his eyes she'd never seen before. "I need to ask you something absolutely insane." Maya slowly got to her feet, her knees aching from kneeling on the hard floor. At 19, she shouldn't feel this old, but double shifts had a way of aging you fast. "What is it, sir?" The professor ran his hand through his hair, making it stick up even more. "I've heard you humming. When you clean, classical pieces. You know music, don't you?" Maya's stomach dropped. She thought she'd been careful. She only hummed when she was sure the building was empty, usually during her late-night shifts. I just like the music, Professor. I listen to it while I work sometimes." "Can you play?" "The piano, I mean. Can you play at all?" The question hung in the air between them like a soap bubble, fragile and dangerous. Maya's fingers involuntarily twitched, remembering the feeling of ivory keys beneath them. She hadn't touched a piano in 3 years. Not since the day she'd walked out of the conservatory for the last time, knowing she'd never be back. "I used to," she said carefully. "A little." "Why are you asking?" Professor Hartwell grabbed her shoulders, and Maya was so shocked she nearly knocked over her bucket. "Listen to me. The donors' gala starts in 45 minutes. 45. There are people coming here tonight who could fund our entire scholarship program for the next decade. Margaret Steinberg was supposed to perform, but she's in the emergency room with food poisoning." "That's terrible," Maya said, though she didn't understand what this had to do with her. "Her backup is in Boston. There's no way he can get here in time. The string quartet doesn't arrive until 8:30 for the main program." His grip on her shoulders tightened. "I need someone to play background music, just for the cocktail hour, nothing fancy, just something pleasant while people arrive and get their drinks." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Professor, I can't. I'm the janitor. I clean the floors. I empty the trash. I don't—" "Please." The word came out broken, desperate. "I'm not asking for Rachmaninoff. Just play for Elise or Claire de Lune. Something everyone knows. Something safe. No one will even be paying attention. They'll be too busy talking and drinking expensive champagne." Maya looked down at her uniform, the faded blue coveralls with her name stitched on the pocket, the rubber gloves stuffed in her belt, the sensible non-slip shoes that had seen better days. "I don't have anything to wear. My assistant keeps a spare dress in her office. You're about her size." He was already pulling her down the hallway. "Please, Maya. I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. The board president is already here. The Sterling family just pulled up outside. If we don't have music, it'll be a disaster." The Sterling family. Maya knew that name. Everyone in the classical music world knew that name. Victoria Sterling had played at the White House. Her recordings were used in films. And now Maya was supposed to play piano at a party she was attending? "Professor, I really don't think—" 20 minutes, he said. "That's all I need. 20 minutes of simple background music. I'll pay you triple overtime." Triple overtime. That would cover her mother's medication for the next month. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. Her mother didn't even know she'd once played piano. It was easier that way. Easier than explaining why she'd given it up. Easier than seeing the guilt in her mother's eyes. "Okay," she whispered. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur. Professor Hartwell's assistant, a kind woman named Dorothy, helped Maya into the black dress. It was simple but elegant, with long sleeves that would hide her work-worn hands. Dorothy even had a pair of low heels that almost fit, and quickly helped Maya pin her hair into something resembling a formal style. "You look lovely, dear," Dorothy said, but Maya couldn't look at herself in the mirror. She was afraid of what she might see. The ghost of who she used to be, maybe, or worse, a janitor playing dress-up. The recital hall was already half full when Professor Hartwell led her to the side entrance. Maya could see them through the crack. In the door, women in gowns that probably cost more than she made in a year, men in tuxedos discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes. The massive Steinway grand piano sat in the center of the stage, its black surface polished to a mirror. Shine. She'd cleaned that piano herself just hours ago, never imagining she'd be sitting at it. "Remember," Professor Hartwell whispered, "just background music. Nothing that draws attention. Think of yourself as human music." Maya wanted to laugh at that. If only he knew. If only he knew about the competitions, the recordings, the acceptance letter to Juilliard she'd had to turn down. But she just nodded and walked onto the stage. Nobody looked at her. She was invisible, just another hired help, like when she pushed her cleaning cart through these same spaces at midnight. Her legs felt shaky as she approached the bench. The piano loomed before her, magnificent and terrifying. She sat down and adjusted the bench height, her body remembering exactly where it should be. The cool ivory under her fingers sent a shiver through her entire body. How many times had she dreamed of this moment? Not this exact moment. She'd never dreamed of being a last-minute substitute at a party where she wasn't even a guest. But, sitting at a piano again, being allowed to play. The room's chatter continued around her. Someone laughed loudly near the bar. Glasses clinked. She could hear fragments of conversation. Something about a merger, a complaint about the traffic, praise for the new conductor at the symphony. Maya placed her fingers in position for the opening of Für Elise. Such a simple piece. Every beginning. Piano student learned it. She'd played it when she was 6 years old, her feet dangling from the bench because they couldn't reach the pedals. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for just a moment, and made a promise to herself. Just this, once, just for 20 minutes. She would let herself remember what it felt like to be a musician instead of a janitor. She would play these simple tunes that Professor Hartwell requested, collect her overtime pay, and go back to her real life. Her finger pressed down on the first E. The note rang out clear and pure in the acoustically perfect hall. Something inside, her chest loosened like a fist that had been clenched for 3 years, finally relaxing. The second note followed, then the third. And then she was playing, really playing, for the first time since everything had fallen apart. She told herself to keep it simple. Background music, human music. But her hands had other ideas. The familiar notes of Für Elise flowed from Maya's fingers, but something strange was happening. Her left hand, instead of playing the simple accompaniment she'd intended, began adding subtle harmonies she hadn't even thought about. It was like her hands remembered things her mind had tried to forget. Behind her, the party continued. Ice clinked in glasses. A woman's perfume, heavy and expensive, drifted across the stage. Maya kept her eyes fixed on the piano keys, watching her fingers move as if they belonged to someone else, someone she used to be. The piece was supposed to last about 3 minutes. She could stretch it to 5, maybe 6 if she played slowly. But as she reached the end of the first section, her hands didn't stop. They glided into a variation, something her first teacher, Mrs. Chen, had shown her when she was 8 years old. Music is like breathing, Mrs. Chen had said, her wrinkled hands guiding Maya's small ones. You don't think about it, you just let it happen. Maya had been 7 when her mother first noticed her humming along to the radio, matching every note, perfectly. They didn't have money for a piano or lessons, but her mother had worked extra shifts at the restaurant, saving every penny. When she finally had enough, she'd taken Maya to Mrs. Chen's tiny apartment, where an old upright piano took up half the living room. Your daughter has perfect pitch, Mrs. Chen had told Maya's mother after that first lesson. This is very rare, very special, special. Maya's fingers moved into the second section of the piece, adding small ornaments, tiny flourishes that made the simple melody sparkle. She could feel the music pulling her deeper, like diving into warm water. By the time she was 10, Maya had won her first competition. The prize was $500 and a cheap plastic trophy, but her mother had framed the certificate and hung it in their kitchen. By 12, she was playing with the city's youth orchestra. By 15, she had scouts from conservatories across the country coming to hear her play. The Juilliard audition had been on a rainy Tuesday in March. She'd played Chopin's Ballade No. 1, a piece so difficult most adults couldn't master it. The judges had sat stone-faced through her entire performance, giving nothing away. But when she finished one of them, a famous pianist whose recordings she'd studied had stood up and applauded. The acceptance letter came 2 weeks later. Full scholarship, room and board included. A chance to study with the best teachers in the world. Her mother had cried for an hour, holding that letter like it was made of gold. Maya transitioned out of Für Elise without thinking about it, her fingers finding the opening notes of Chopin's Raindrop Prelude. This was dangerous. This wasn't background music anymore, but she couldn't stop. The music had taken over and she was just along for the ride. She'd been at Juilliard for exactly 13 months when her mother called. The word cancer didn't seem real at first. It was just a word like piano or practice. But then came other words: stage 3, chemotherapy, insurance won't cover. The bills started arriving 2 weeks later. $20,000 for the surgery, $15,000 for the first round of chemo, $8,000 for the hospital stay. Numbers that might as well have been millions for a 17-year-old music student, and her mother who waited tables. Maya had tried everything. She'd applied for grants, taken out loans, played at weddings and corporate events on weekends. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The day she withdrew from Juilliard, her advisor had begged her to reconsider. "You have a gift," he'd said. "You can't throw this away." But Maya had looked him in the eye and said, "My mother gave me life. Music is just sound." That was 3 years ago. 3 years of working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. 3 years of walking past music stores without looking in the windows. 3 years of telling herself she'd made the right choice. The Raindrop Prelude was building now, the repeated notes in the left hand creating tension while the melody soared above. Maya noticed the conversation behind her had gotten quieter. She didn't turn around, didn't want to see if anyone was watching. She just played. After she'd left school, she'd sold her keyboard, the one her mother had bought her for her 16th birthday, paying it off in installments over 2 years. She'd sold her sheet music, her metronome, even her adjustable piano bench. Every dollar went toward medical bills. The only job she could find with flexible hours was cleaning. The night shift at Belmont Academy paid well, and they let her work around her mother's treatment schedule. She'd told herself it was temporary, just until her mother got better, just until the bills were paid. But then she discovered something, during those late-night shifts. When the building was empty, when it was just her and her mop bucket, she could stand outside the practice rooms and listen to the echoes of the day's lessons. Sometimes a student would leave sheet music on the piano, and she'd read through it, hearing the music in her head. Once, just once, she'd sat at one of the pianos at 3 in the morning. She'd placed her hands on the keys but couldn't press down. It felt like betrayal, like admitting that she missed it. So she'd just sat there, hands hovering over the keys, remembering what it felt like to make music. The Chopin was ending now, and Maya's hands moved without her permission into something else. Liszt's Liebestraum No. 3, Love Dream. She'd learned this piece for a boy she'd liked at conservatory. Someone who'd said her playing made him believe in beautiful things. He'd stopped calling after she dropped out. Her mother didn't know Maya had been a music student. She'd told her she was studying business, that the late nights were spent at the library working on economics papers. Every time her mother apologized for being sick, for ruining Maya's future, Maya would smile and say, "You're not ruining anything. I'm exactly where I want to be." The lie got easier with time. So did pretending she didn't miss music like missing a part of her own body. But now, sitting at this piano, playing for people who didn't even know her name, all those buried feelings came rushing back. The joy of a perfectly executed passage. The way time seemed to stop when she was really connected to the music. The feeling that she was speaking a language more honest than words. Her eyes were burning. She blinked hard, refusing to cry. Not here. Not now. She had maybe 10 more minutes before Professor Hartwell would signal her to stop. 10 more minutes to pretend she was the person she used to be, the person she might have become. The practice room where she'd first heard this piano was directly above the stage. She'd been mopping the floor up there 2 months ago when someone had left the door open. The sound had drifted up through the vents, a student struggling through a Bach invention. She'd wanted so badly to go down and show them how to phrase it properly, how to make the two voices sing independently. Instead, she'd kept mopping. The Liszt piece was building to its climax now, the melody becoming more passionate, more desperate. Maya's body swayed slightly with the music, the way it always had when she really let herself feel the notes. She'd forgotten about the people behind her, forgotten about the dress that wasn't hers, forgotten about everything except the music pouring from her fingers. This was who she really was. Not a janitor, not a college dropout, not a girl who'd given up her dreams. She was a musician. She'd always been a musician. Even when she was scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans, the music had been there, waiting like a loyal friend who never asked why she'd stayed away so long. The last note of the Liszt rang out, and in the brief silence before she began the next piece, Maya heard something that made her freeze. There was no talking behind her, no clinking glasses, no footsteps. The entire room had gone completely silent. The silence behind her was so complete that Maya could hear her own heartbeat. Her hands hovered over the keys, frozen. She'd made a mistake. She'd played too well, drawn attention to herself. Professor Hartwell had asked for background music and she'd turned it into a performance. But then, from somewhere in the back of the room came the soft sound of a glass being set down on a table. Then another, and another. The rustle of expensive fabric as people turned toward the stage. A chair creaking as someone sat down. Maya's fingers found the keys again, almost against her will. This time it was Debussy's Clair de Lune. Moonlight. The notes floated out like drops of silver, each one hanging in the air before dissolving into the next. She played it slower than usual, letting each phrase breathe, letting the silence between the notes speak as loudly as the notes themselves. Man in a navy tuxedo, she could see him from the corner of her eye, had been in the middle of what looked like an important conversation. His companion, a younger man holding a tablet, was still talking, but the older man wasn't listening anymore. His head had turned toward the piano, his mouth slightly open. The woman in the red dress who'd been laughing loudly earlier was now standing perfectly still, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. The bubbles rose to the surface and popped, but she didn't take a sip. Maya closed her eyes. If she couldn't see them, maybe they couldn't see her. Maybe she could pretend she was alone, playing for no one but herself, the way she'd imagined doing. During all those night shifts, the Clair de Lune flowed into something else, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. This was showing off and she knew it. This was a piece that announced itself, that demanded attention from the very first chord. The deep, ominous notes filled the hall like thunder. Professor Hartwell, standing by the entrance, had his hand over his mouth. His assistant Dorothy was beside him and she was gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. They'd expected background music. They'd gotten something else entirely. Maya's left hand pounded out the bass notes while her right hand sang the melody above it. The piece was angry and beautiful at the same time, like a storm over the ocean. She'd first learned it during her second year at conservatory, when she was still naive enough to think talent was all that mattered in the world. Near the bar, a woman pulled out her phone, not to check messages or take a call, but to record. The small red light blinked as she held it steady, capturing the image of the young woman in the borrowed dress who was making the Steinway sing. More phones appeared. 1, then 5, then a dozen. The modern instinct to document something extraordinary. But Maya didn't see them. She was inside the music now, in that place where nothing else existed. The Rachmaninoff built and built, each section more intense than the last. Maya's whole body was involved now. Her shoulders, her back, even her breathing timed to the phrases. She'd forgotten about keeping it simple. She'd forgotten about being invisible. She'd forgotten everything except the conversation between her fingers and the keys. An elderly man near the front. Maya would later learn he was a retired conductor from the Berlin Philharmonic, sat down heavily in the nearest chair. He recognized what he was hearing. Not just technical skill, though there was plenty of that. Not just musical understanding, though that was evident too. He was hearing that rarest of things, a true artist who had been silent too long. The prelude reached its climax, the massive chords filling every corner of the hall. Maya's hands stretched to reach the wide intervals, muscle memory guiding her through passages she hadn't played in years. The piano seemed to grow under her, touch, becoming an orchestra, becoming a voice that could shake the walls. When the last chord finally died away, Maya didn't pause. She couldn't. The music was pouring out of her now like water from a broken dam. She moved into Chopin's revolutionary etude, her left hand racing through the furious passages while her right hand sang the melody of rebellion above it. A couple who'd been heading toward the exit stopped in the doorway. The man still had his coat over his arm, but he wasn't moving. His wife had her hand on his chest, holding him there, both of them transfixed. The caterers had stopped serving. They stood against the wall, silver trays forgotten in their hands, watching this girl they'd probably seen before, pushing a mop bucket, emptying trash bins, transform into something magnificent. Maya had played this etude at her last recital, before leaving school. She'd been angry then, angry at the unfairness of life, at the cruel joke of being given a gift she couldn't afford to use. That anger was still there, in every racing note, in every pounded chord. But there was something else now too. Joy. Pure, simple joy at being able to play again. Her hair had come loose from Dorothy's carefully placed pins. Strands fell across her face, but she didn't brush them away. Sweat beaded on her forehead from the physical effort of the piece. Her borrowed shoes had slipped off her feet. She was playing the pedals in her stockings the way she preferred. The board president, a woman known for her poker face during million-dollar negotiations, had tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She just stood there letting them fall, watching this maintenance worker reveal herself to be a master. The etude ended with a crash of sound that seemed to shake the chandelier. Maya's hands lifted from the keys, trembling. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the silence of surprise. This was the silence of awe. She should stop. She knew she should stop. Professor Hartwell had asked for 20 minutes, and she'd already gone past that. But her hands were moving again, finding the opening notes of one last piece. Liszt's La Campanella, the Little Bell. This was the piece that had won her the youth competition when she was 14. The piece that had made her teacher cry. The piece that required not just skill but a kind of fearlessness, a willingness to risk everything for the sake of beauty. The notes sparkled and danced, light and impossibly fast. Her right hand flew across the upper register of the piano, creating the illusion of bells ringing. It was like watching a hummingbird. You knew the wings were moving, but they were too fast to see clearly. A man in the back, someone would later tell Maya he was a talent scout for Deutsche Grammophon, was typing furiously on his phone, sending messages to people who needed to know about this. Right now, before someone else discovered her. Maya's eyes were completely closed now. She wasn't in the recital hall anymore. She wasn't anywhere. She was the music, and the music was her. Every note that rang out was a piece of her soul made audible. Every phrase a confession of who she really was beneath the janitor's uniform. The piece built to its final climax, the bells ringing faster and faster, like celebration and farewell at the same time. Maya's hands were a blur, but every note was crystal clear, every accent perfectly placed. This wasn't just playing. This was resurrection. The last note rang out high and pure, like a star in a dark sky. Maya's hands fell to her lap. She sat there, breathing hard, her whole body shaking. The spell was breaking. She was becoming aware of where she was again, what she'd done. The silence stretched for one heartbeat. 2. 3. Then the room exploded. The applause was immediate and overwhelming. Not polite cocktail party clapping, but the kind of thunder that follows a concert at Carnegie Hall. People were standing. When had they moved closer to the stage? The entire room had reorganized itself around the piano without her noticing. Maya's eyes flew open. The sea of faces looking at her weren't the bored, disinterested expressions of party guests anymore. They were alive, electric, transformed. Some were crying. Others were smiling so wide it looked like their faces might crack. All of them were applauding like their lives depended on it. She started to stand, to run, to escape back to the safety of her mop bucket and her invisible life. But her legs wouldn't work. She could only sit there staring at these elegant strangers who were looking at her, really looking at her for the first time. And then she saw her. A woman in a black evening gown, standing right at the front, her face radiant with something that looked like recognition, or maybe it was hope. Victoria Sterling. The Victoria Sterling, and she was walking toward the stage. Victoria Sterling moved like water, smooth and graceful, her black gown seeming to float as she approached the stage. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst right through the borrowed dress. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Victoria was 62 years old, but she looked timeless. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and her eyes, those famous eyes that had seen her perform for presidents and royalty, were fixed on Maya with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. The applause was still going, but it seemed distant now, like thunder far away. Maya's hands were shaking in her lap. She tucked them under her legs, trying to hide the trembling. She was just a janitor. She cleaned these floors. She wasn't supposed to be here. Victoria climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The clicking of her heels on the polished wood was the loudest sound in the world. She stopped just a few feet from the piano bench, and the room finally fell silent again, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. "What's your name?" Victoria's voice was warm but commanding, the kind of voice that had given master classes at the finest conservatories in the world. Maya's throat was completely dry. She tried to swallow, tried to speak, but nothing came out. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Maya," she whispered. Then louder. "Maya Chen. Maya Chen." Victoria repeated the name slowly, like she was tasting it. "How old are you, Maya?" 19. A murmur ran through the crowd. 19. She was just 19. "Where did you study?" Victoria asked, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she already knew the answer would be complicated. Maya looked down at her hands. They were workers' hands now, with short nails and calluses from gripping mop handles. Not pianists' hands anymore. I studied at Juilliard for a year." The murmur grew louder. "Juilliard?" Someone who'd been at Juilliard was cleaning their floors? "Why did you leave?" Victoria's voice was gentle now, like she was talking to a frightened bird. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people. "I had to," she said simply. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She sat down on the piano bench beside Maya. The crowd seemed to lean forward collectively, straining, to hear what would come next. "I know that Rachmaninoff prelude," Victoria said quietly so only Maya could hear. "I know it because I played it at my first professional concert. I was 17 and I was terrified. But you played it like someone who has lived it, like someone who understands what it means to have darkness and light fighting inside the same heart." Maya's tears were falling now. She couldn't stop them. They dropped onto her hands, onto the borrowed dress, onto the piano bench where countless students had sat before her. "Tell me," Victoria said. "Tell me why someone who plays like that is pushing a mop at midnight instead of playing concerts." The words came out in a rush, like they'd been waiting 3 years to be spoken. "My mother got sick, cancer. The insurance wouldn't cover most of it. The bills were impossible. I tried to keep going, tried to work and study, but she needed me. She needed the money more than the world needed another pianist." Victoria's hand found Maya's shoulder. The touch was warm and steady. "Your mother. Does she know?" Does she know what you gave up? Maya shook her head violently. No, never. I told her I was studying business, that I got a good job with flexible hours. She thinks I'm building a career in management. She can't know. It would destroy her. And you? Victoria asked. What about what this is doing to you? Maya finally looked up, meeting those famous eyes. She's my mother. She gave me everything. Music is it's just sound. She's my family. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then she stood up. She faced the crowd, and her voice carried to every corner of the room without her having to raise it. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what you just witnessed? The room was silent, waiting. You witnessed a resurrection. This young woman, Maya Chen, has the kind of talent that appears perhaps once in a generation, and she's been hiding it, sacrificing it for the most noble reason there is, love for her family. She turned back to Maya. Stand up. Maya's legs felt like jelly, but she stood. Victoria took her hand and raised it, like a referee declaring a champion. This is not acceptable, Victoria announced to the room. This kind of talent, this kind of sacrifice, we cannot let this stand. Not in our community, not on our watch. The board president stepped forward. Her face was still wet with tears, but her voice was strong. What do you need? What is your mother near? Maya couldn't speak. This was too much. These people didn't know her. She was nobody to them. The bills, someone called out. How much are the medical bills? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. 80,000. Still owe 80,000. The number hung in the air. It was everything to Maya, but she could see in their faces that to many of these people it was nothing. The woman in the red dress spent more than that on a car. I'll cover it, 3 voices said at the same time. Then 5. Then 10. No, Victoria said, raising her hand. This isn't charity. This is an investment. She looked around the room. The Sterling Foundation will cover the medical bills. All of them. Past, present, and future. Maya's knees buckled. Victoria caught her, held her up. But that's not enough, Victoria continued. She needs to return to school. She needs to study. She needs to perform. She looked at Maya. Would you like that? To play again? To really play, not just when you think no one is listening? Maya couldn't speak through the sobs that were shaking her whole body. She just nodded. Professor Hartwell, Victoria called out. I believe your academy has a scholarship program? Professor Hartwell was stumbling over his words. Yes, of course, full scholarship immediately, and a living stipend and access to all our facilities anytime she wants. That's kind of you, Victoria said, but I think Maya has outgrown what a local academy can offer. She squeezed Maya's hand. I haven't taken a student in 5 years. I swore I was done teaching. But if you're willing to work, really work, I'll teach you myself. The room gasped. Victoria Sterling hadn't taken a private student since she'd stopped touring. Music magazines would pay thousands just for an interview about her teaching methods. Maya found her voice. I can't pay you. Victoria laughed, a sound like silver bells. My dear girl, you just gave me something worth more than money. You reminded me why music matters. You reminded all of us. She gestured to the room. Look at them. Look at what you did to them. Maya looked, really looked. These wealthy, powerful people, some of them captains of industry, others famous in their own right, were looking at her with something she'd never expected to see. Respect, admiration, hope. But my job, Maya said weakly. I need the job. You have a job, Victoria said firmly. Your job is to play. Your job is to share this gift with the world. Your job is to make people feel what you just made us feel. The man from Deutsche Grammophon stepped forward. When she's ready, we'd like to discuss a recording contract. Another voice called out. The Philadelphia Orchestra would love to have her as a guest soloist. The Chopin competition is in 6 months, someone else added. With the right preparation, enough, Victoria said, but she was smiling, one step at a time. First, she needs to tell her mother the truth. Then she needs to remember how to be a musician instead of a martyr. She turned back to Maya. It won't be easy. 3 years is a long time to be away. Your hands will need to relearn things. Your stamina will need to be rebuilt. But what I heard tonight, that wasn't just technique. That was truth. And truth can't be taught. It can only be unleashed. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, probably smearing the makeup Dorothy had carefully applied. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for me? Victoria's eyes softened. Because 40 years ago I was you. Different story, same struggle. And someone did this for me. Someone saw me playing in a hotel lobby for tips and changed my life. This is how it works, Maya. We save each other. Music saves us, and we save music. She pulled Maya into a hug, and the room exploded in applause again, but this time Maya barely heard it. All she could hear was Victoria whispering in her ear, "The sacrifice is over, dear one. It's time to come home." When they finally pulled apart, Maya saw Professor Hartwell standing at the edge of the stage, tears streaming down his face. He'd thought he was asking his janitor to play background music. He'd discovered instead that he'd been walking past greatness every day for months, never knowing it was there. "There's one more thing," Victoria said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maya, when did you last play for your mother?" Maya's voice was soft. "Never. She's never heard me play." "Not really," Victoria smiled. "Then that's where we begin. Tomorrow we take a piano to her, and you tell her the truth, all of it, and then you play for her what you played for us tonight." Maya nodded, fresh tears falling. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the secret would end. Tomorrow, she would stop being two different people and finally become herself again. But tonight she had played. And that was enough. That was everything. The next morning came too fast and not fast enough. Maya hadn't slept. She'd spent the night staring at the ceiling of the small apartment she shared with her mother, practicing the words she needed to say. Every version sounded wrong. "Mom, I've been lying to you for 3 years. Mom, I gave up music school for you. Mom, I'm not who you think I am." Nothing sounded right. Nothing could make this easier. At 7 o'clock, she heard her mother stirring in the next room, the familiar sound of her slow footsteps, still weak from the last round of treatment, the soft cough that had become part of their morning routine. Maya got up and started making tea, her hands shaking as she filled the kettle. "You're up early, sweetheart," her mother said, shuffling into the kitchen. She looked so small in her bathrobe, like she'd shrunk inside of it. The cancer had taken 40 pounds from her along with so much else. "Mom, we need to talk." Her mother's face immediately filled with worry. "Are you okay? Did something happen at work?" "Yes. No. I mean..." Maya set down the kettle before she dropped it. "Something happened at work, but it's not bad. It's complicated." Her mother sat down at their tiny kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg that Maya kept meaning to fix. "You're scaring me. Some people are coming over today, important people. They're bringing something." "Maya, what's going on?" The doorbell rang before Maya could answer. It was only 7:30, but Victoria Sterling had said they'd be early. Maya's mother looked confused and a little alarmed as Maya went to answer it. Victoria stood in the hallway, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the elegant woman from the night before. Behind her were 4 men carrying something covered in blankets. "Good morning, Maya," Victoria said warmly. "May we come in?" Maya nodded and stepped aside. The men carefully maneuvered their burden through the narrow doorway. Her mother stood, up clutching her bathrobe closed. "Maya, who are these people? What is this?" Victoria stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Victoria Sterling. I'm a pianist, and your daughter is my new student." Maya's mother's face went pale. She reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. "I don't understand." The men had set down their burden and were carefully removing the blankets. Underneath was a piano, Not a grand piano that would never fit in their apartment, but a beautiful, upright piano, its wood gleaming even in the dim morning light. "Maya," her mother whispered. "What is this?" Maya's words came out in a rush. "Mom, I haven't been studying. Business, I never was. I was at Juilliard, I was studying piano. But when you got sick, when the bills started coming, I had to leave. I've been working as a janitor at Belmont Academy. Last night they needed someone to play at an event, and I played. And Mrs. Sterling heard me, and everything changed." Her mother sank into the chair. Her face was impossible to read. "Juilliard? You were at Juilliard? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I lied. I couldn't tell you. I knew what you'd say. I knew you'd make me go back even if it meant—" Maya couldn't finish the sentence. "Even if it meant I died," her mother said quietly. "You gave up Juilliard so I could have treatment." Maya was crying now. "You're my mom, of course I did." Her mother was quiet for a long moment, then she looked at Victoria. "Is she good? My daughter, is she good at piano?" Victoria smiled. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter is extraordinary. What she did last night, I've been playing professionally for 40 years and I've rarely seen anything like it. She doesn't just play music. She becomes it. Play for me," her mother said suddenly, looking at Maya. "Right now. Play for me." Maya looked at the piano the men had just finished setting up. It was positioned by the window, where the morning light could fall across the keys. She walked over slowly, ran her fingers across the wood. It was a Yamaha, professional quality, probably worth more than a year of her janitor's salary. She sat down on the bench they'd brought. Her mother moved her chair closer, close enough that Maya could hear her breathing. "What should I play?" Maya asked. "Whatever you played last night. Whatever made this famous woman decide to teach you." Maya's fingers found the keys. She started with the Chopin, the Raindrop Prelude. But this time she wasn't playing for a room full of strangers. She was playing for the woman who had sung her to sleep, who had worked double shifts to pay for her first piano lessons, who had saved every program from every recital in a box under her bed. The music filled their small apartment, bouncing off the walls, making the windows vibrate slightly. Her mother's eyes never left Maya's face, watching the concentration, the joy, the pain, everything that Maya had been hiding for 3 years. When the Chopin ended, Maya moved into the Rachmaninoff. Her mother gasped at the first thunderous chords. She'd never heard her daughter play like this. The little girl who'd practiced scales in Mrs. Chen's apartment had become something else, entirely. Victoria stood quietly in the corner, recording it all on her phone. Not for publicity or social media, but because she recognized a moment that should be preserved. A daughter revealing herself to her mother. A mother seeing her child clearly for the first time. The Rachmaninoff gave way to Liszt, then to a piece Maya hadn't played last night. A simple Korean lullaby her mother had sung when Maya was small. She'd arranged it herself years ago, turning the simple melody into something complex and beautiful, but still recognizable. Her mother was sobbing now, her hands pressed to her mouth. Maya played for 20 minutes, 30, 40. Everything she'd wanted to play for 3 years. Everything. She'd practiced in her head during those long nights of mopping floors. Everything she was, everything she'd hidden, everything she'd sacrificed. When she finally stopped, her mother stood up and pulled her into the tightest hug Maya could remember. They stood there, crying into each other's shoulders, while Victoria quietly ushered the delivery men out. "Why didn't you tell me?" her mother whispered. "All this time, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have made me go back and I couldn't leave you. My stubborn, beautiful, foolish girl," her mother said. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted you to give up your dreams for me? They were never just my dreams, Mom. They were our dreams, remember? You used to say we were a team." Her mother pulled back and looked at her. "Then, as your teammate, I'm telling you, no more sacrifices, no more hiding. You play. You play for the whole world to hear." Victoria stepped forward, Mrs. Chen, I should tell you, the medical bills have been taken care of, all of them, and future treatments, whatever you need. Maya's mother looked bewildered. I don't understand. How? Because your daughter reminded a room full of people why art matters, why beauty matters, why sacrifice and love matter. They wanted to be part of bringing her music back to the world. Over the next hours, Victoria explained everything. The scholarship to continue her education, the mentorship, the recording contract waiting when she was ready, the performances already being discussed, the competition in Warsaw that Victoria wanted to prepare her for. But first, Victoria said, she needs to rebuild. 3 years is a long time. We'll start with 4 hours a day of practice, scales, etudes, the basics. Her hands need to remember their strength. I can't believe this is real, Maya's mother kept saying. Yesterday you were a janitor, Maya finished. And I was good at it. I'm not ashamed of it, Mom. It kept us going. It kept you alive. But now? Her mother asked. Now I'm a pianist again. That afternoon, neighbors started knocking on the door, wondering where the beautiful music was coming from. Maya played for them too, turning their small apartment into an impromptu concert hall. Mrs. Kim from next door, who'd always complained about noise, sat on their couch with tears streaming down her face. The teenage boy from upstairs, who usually only listened to rap music, stood in the doorway mesmerized. By evening, the apartment was full of people. Someone had brought food. Someone else had brought flowers. It had turned into a celebration, not just of Maya's music, but of the whole community that had watched her struggle for 3 years without knowing why. As the sun set, Victoria pulled Maya aside. Tomorrow we really begin. It won't be easy. You have 3 years of catching up to do. Your hands have forgotten things. Your stamina is gone. But what I heard today, the foundation is still there. The gift is still there. I'm ready, Maya said. I've been ready for 3 years. Victoria smiled. There's one more thing. In 6 months, there's a gala performance, a fundraiser for music education. I'd like you to perform. Your first official concert as my student. Where? Maya asked. Carnegie Hall. Maya's breath caught. Carnegie Hall, the dream she'd had since she was 7 years old. Think you can be ready? Victoria asked. Maya looked across the room at her mother, who was laughing at something a neighbor had said. She looked healthier than she had in months, like the music had given her strength. Yes, Maya said. I'll be ready. That night, after everyone had gone home, Maya and her mother sat together on the couch. The piano stood against the wall, waiting for tomorrow, waiting for all the tomorrows to come. Play one more thing, her mother said. Something just for us. Maya sat at the piano and played the first piece she'd ever learned, a simple children's song about a butterfly. Her mother hummed along, the same way she had when Maya was 7 years old and the world was full of nothing but possibility. The butterfly in the song flew away at the end, going on to beautiful adventures. But it always remembered where it came from. It always remembered home, just like Maya would remember these 3 years. Not with bitterness, but with pride. She'd chosen love over ambition. She'd chosen family over fame. And now somehow she was getting the chance to have both. The music drifted out through the windows into the night air, reaching ears that would remember it, inspire someone else who was struggling, someone else who was hiding their light under the weight of necessity. Because that's what music does. It finds us in our darkest moments and reminds us that beauty still exists. That hope still exists. That sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get a second chance to become who we were always meant to be.